In this presentation, we're going to check the settings to make sure that we have these settings set up so that we can make the expenses billable. In other words, when we create a bill or a check, in which case we are going to be paying something to a vendor, we can then have these settings set up so that amount can be taken and then be helped to generate the charge to our customers with the use of an invoice or a sales receipt. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Online. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars file. Our objective right here is to take a look at the settings. Let's just get an idea of what the settings are that we're going to be taking a look at. By doing that, we're going to go to the flowchart in the QuickBooks desktop. So when we think about the QuickBooks desktop, typically we think about a bill or something that we're going to have paying to a vendor. We write a bill or a check in our flowchart here. So we would enter a bill or we would write a check. And when we do so, of course, obviously we are paying someone else, and that's going to generate typically an expense. We will have an expense related to it. Now, it might be the case that we're purchasing something that we're having an expense for that we would like to show up on a line item on the invoice or the sales receipt that we're going to charge the customer. In other words, if we have something on a bill that we paid for, we might have paid for it so that, so that we can do a particular job or something like that, and therefore would like that to basically show up on the invoice as a line item as we generate the invoice. So in order to do that, we could set up an option that'll help us to kind of tie those things together. We can make a bill, we can make a bill or a check. We can have a setting that will help us to tie that bill or check into an invoice that we will create for a particular client or a sales receipt. So we'll see that in future presentations. Right now, we just want to turn on the setting to allow us to do that. So let's go back to QuickBooks Online, and let's just, for example, if we open up and we go to the payout information, and let's say we had a bill here. If I open up the bill that we're going to have, we're not going to actually record one, but I just want to take a look at the format of it. This is something that we would be paying to someone else. Accounts payable would be going up, and then we would be paying it off to a vendor. As we select the category down here, we can also say it's going to be billable, a billable item, and then a customer item down below, so that when we later then pull up a receipt payment or an invoice for that particular customer, QuickBooks will say, hey, you had this billable item, you had this expense that you recorded that you wanted to make sure you put over on that particular customer's invoice when you were to invoice that client, and it'll pull that over for us. So to do that, we want to make sure these screens are available for us. Otherwise, the default is not to have them there to make the bill a little bit more simplified. We turned them on when we set the settings on, but I just want to double check on that. So I'm going to close this back out. We're going to scroll back up top. We're going to be in the little cog up top. It's going to be under the accounting and setting, account and settings. And then we want to be in the expense tab on the left. So we're going to be in the expense tab on the left. And then these items, we have to have these turned on. So if these items aren't turned on, in particular, this last one, which isn't on by the default, I believe, which is make expense and items billable, turn them on. Once that is on, and you can do that by the little pencil over here, and then you turn it on. And then I'm going to close that out. And then once that is on, then of course, once we make our bill and we open the bill, once we add the bill, you'll be able to see those line items on the bill for these line items on the end for the billable and the customer. And then once we close that back out, then after we pay that bill and we assign it out, then we would go in here and we'd have a sales receipt or the make sales, or we'd have an invoice or send invoice. And those two things would then ask us, if we select the same customer, if we want to include that billable item in the next invoice or sales receipt we make for that particular customer.